Scream 6 is out. We have a spoiler-free review. We will not spoil who might be wearing the ghostface mask. We would never dream of it. We might do a spoiler discussion down the road at some point, but not today. Alonso, can you tell us about Scream 6?
Hello.
Let's play a game.
You know you're like the 10th guy to try this, right? It never works out for the dipshit in the mask.
So this is Ghostface Takes Manhattan, basically. For the first time, the Scream franchise leaves the town of Woodsboro and comes to the Big Bad Apple because Tara Carpenter, played by Jenna Ortega, is attending college there, along with the twins, Mindy and Chad. And, of course, older sister Sam, played by Melissa Barrera, tags along just to make sure that her sister stays safe. But, of course, eventually their past comes chasing them down, as it invariably does, and the phone calls start happening, and the Gail Weathers turns up with the microphone, and we are back on very familiar ground. And of course, because it's a Scream movie, at some point someone has to stop and explain to us what's happening and how this is what happens in a franchise and a series and a sequel and all those things, and who does that make as the likely suspect, and who does that make as the likely next victim. And so yes, this is a Scream movie all the way through. So look, we're at chapter 6. So you know what you're getting, and you either know that you want that or you know that you don't. If you do want that, I suspect you will have a good time with this one. I do enjoy this franchise. I like the fun metatextual thing of it. And then on top of that, the fairly clever and inventive, gory dispatching. There's a famous person who dies before the credits, because again, that's what happens in a Scream movie. So yeah, I had a good time.
I enjoyed that section in the beginning, which is of course an obligatory thing that happens in all Scream movies. There's like a whole separate murder that occurs. I enjoyed that, I think, most of all. I mean, I had a really good time at this movie, and I screamed and I squirmed and cringed, and some of the kills are gnarly. This feels, I don't know, is this more bloody, more gory than most Screams? I mean, they're all pretty violent, but there are some things that happen here where I'm like, dude.
I mean, look, the times change, but look, the first one has Rose McGowan's head getting crushed in a garage door opener. So I think there's pretty much always been some level of like pretty graphic viscera going on here.
There is knife twisting, like literal knife twisting going on. Yeah. What can we say? It is a very fake version of New York.
Yeah, played by Montreal. Having
said that, the subway scene is beautifully staged and so tense. There's a whole thing that takes place in a bodega.
Yes, with no cat. So if you're worried about animals, and there's no bodega cat in harm's way here.
It was smart enough to slither away if indeed there is a cat that lives in the bodega. But that felt like something out of a Western, the way that is shot and edited and paced, and the use of silence and the use of like the crunch of glass and all that. So individual scenes are really, really well done. This is the same team behind Scream 5. It is
Radio Silence is their collective name.
Yeah, Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler, is it Gillett? And they directed it.
Yeah.
Written by James Vanderbilt, Guy Busick, and Kevin Williamson gets a characters by credit, of course. As always, I had a lot of fun, but this gets a little long and it gets a little silly. People definitely know what movie they're in.
Yeah.
By the end, there's some very over-the-top stuff going on. And then there are people who probably should be dead that aren't. Well, and I found that confusing as well.
Yeah, but I think that also kind of feels part and parcel of these things, where like it's going to get a little outrageous at the end. The homicide monologue is always going to be a little ridiculous, and there are people who are like, how the hell did they survive that? And they just do, and you kind of go with that. I really like Jasmin Savoy Brown. This movie's a mix of characters we met in the 5th movie, and then a couple of legacies. Gail Weathers is back. Hayden Panettiere returns as her character from Scream 4. But Jasmin Savoy Brown as Mindy, I think she's kind of stepped in to be the Jamie Kennedy. Like, she's the nerd who sort of explains the rules, of these movies. And I find her really charming and really funny. I like Mason Gooding a lot. He manages to be like arrogantly handsome. Like that's a tricky thing to pull off and still be a likable character, but he does that. Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera, of course, are a lot of fun. I know there are people who hated 5 and don't want anything to do with this sort of, new branch of the franchise. And yeah, if you hated 5, this is probably not going to win you back. But if you are still enjoying these movies, no longer in the hands of Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson, then I think you'll like this one.
I enjoyed 5, and I think 5 had more to say about the state of horror cinema and the state of fandom that this movie does not seem to have as much of a pointed, intelligent message. This movie kind of banks on its viewers being worshipful of the lore, like of all things Scream and or Stab, which are essentially interchangeable. I am not a gigantic aficionado of the franchise, so a lot of that was lost on me. It's beyond Easter eggs. Like it's a whole bunch of eggs and they're in a basket and they're handing that basket to you. Here they are
with a bow on it.
Yeah. So, and I think they overestimate the desire for that. But again, like maybe that is not for me. And it's for somebody who does love that stuff. They're going to be like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that. I remember that. And that was really cool for them. So yeah, I love Jenna Ortega. She and Melissa Barrera have really great chemistry with each other. Yeah. And I'm glad that she is around, using her sense of humor, using her sort of like spiky, cool girl presence. She's good at all that. Yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. But there is a muchness to it. And we should mention that there's no Neve Campbell here because they wouldn't pay her what she wanted. And
Paramount.
And so because of that, they mention her. I mean, you feel her absence and they talk about her like, oh, Sydney didn't want to be here. And that's kind of meta as well. That's kind of meta. Sydney didn't want to be here, which literally is true because they wouldn't pay her.
Yeah, that was a bad move. But again, I think all the things you talk about in terms of like all the reference points and the handing and stuff, that's just part and parcel of a part 6. I think unless you are doing the kind of franchise that is just like throwing everything out or pretending that certain sequels didn't exist. We're at part 6 by now. If you're into the lore, you want to know about it. And if you're just coming in late or forgot things, you need to be reminded of them. So for the kind of exposition that is required here, that's a pretty good way to do it.
Okay. So what's your number?
I say a 7. It's not great. It doesn't have, like you said, it doesn't have the insight about what it's about the way the previous one does, but it's still, a fun watch.
I'll say 6.6 has individually great set pieces, but on the whole, didn't love it. So Scream 6 is out in theaters. Let us know if you're going to see it.